is a very critical time. McArthur, the pilot of the Crew-2 mission, by the time they actually get to what they're talking about, hold 1, that's waypoint 1. Right now, they're at about 185 meters from the International Space Station. They're heading out to approximately 220. At that point, Dragon will transition to hold mode or hold 1, whereas holding at that waypoint. To limit the prop consumption, as was mentioned over the Dragon ground loops, the big loop actually right now, as even the station team is listening in, the station crew, Mark Van de Heij namely, who's monitoring this sequence right now. That will be about a minute that they have from the time that they enter hold 1 to the time that the first fly-around burn is initiated. That burn being the first of 4. It'll be a zenith to aft burn. It's about a 50-second burn that maneuvers the Dragon into a position to essentially cruise down to right behind or at the aft section of the International Space Station. So again, you're seeing, we were getting fantastic views of the Dragon looking right up at it. And Kate, you were perfectly describing that tiny little hole that Thomas is going to be taking photos out of. You can see even after that first burn is executed, those burns will actually keep Dragon in a position where that forward hatch, what we're looking at right now with that bright circle at the very dead center, that's where Thomas Pesquet will be taking some of the digital photographs. That forward hatch will be pointing towards the International Space Station at all times as it makes its way around the International Space Station. Again, all 4 fly-around burns to make that perfect loop all the way around.
Once again, this flyover maneuver is brand new to Crew Dragon. This is the first time that we will be executing it. The maneuver itself is basically a photographic survey of the station. Yeah, so there you can see kind of big picture. Dragon is going to be making one big loop around station, and Thomas Pesquet will be taking photographs through the port window, essentially there on the forward hatch of the station, which will hopefully fill in some gaps that currently exist in terms of the photographs that have taken of station. So even though there are many cameras on station, unfortunately there are certain spots, certain angles that can't be photographed just due to physical location. So Thomas will be taking pictures, and essentially Dragon will be making one big loop around station to perform this photographic survey.
This was a very standard procedure for the shuttle. The shuttle used to undock from the International Space Station, regularly survey the station, providing updates, particularly when it was under construction, right? It was a very dynamic phase. That was more of the assembly phase of the International Space Station. We're in pretty much the third decade. After more than 20 years, we are in it. This is the time of maximum utilization. So there have been a couple of additions recently to the International Space Station, namely commercial modules. I think most recently was the NanoRacks Bishop airlock, which is essentially a way to deploy satellites. It also removes trash. It can also retrieve some ORUs or replacement unit spare parts from the outside with the help of the robotic arm. So there are a couple of new elements, and we'll be able to see that for the very first time after this fly-around. The last fly-around that happened was on board a Russian Soyuz, where Drew Feustel, NASA astronaut, used a handheld camera to do the exact same thing. As the Soyuz undocked from the International Space Station, it did the same thing, did a photographic survey as it flew around, and so those are from 2018. So this will be brand new, 2021, and we'll get to see some of those new modules, like the NanoRacks airlock module, as well as a couple of other things, the Bartolomeo external platform that's on the European Space Agency side. So this will be very important to see.
So there on your screen, that is once again a live view of Crew Dragon Endeavour departing the International Space Station with the Crew-2 crew on board. And those pulses that you see are actually pulses coming from the Draco thrusters on board Dragon in order for Dragon to hold position and maneuver. Like we said, it's going to be performing this fly-around maneuver. Those Draco thrusters we can see activating in order to hold course.
It looks very bright because the cameras themselves on the International Space Station are right now overexposed. By doing so, it allows us to see some of those Draco maneuvering thrusters. There, it's becoming clearer now. We're in an orbital. We're about to enter into an orbital sunset. So you were getting some glimpses from the Dragon. We just got a second of it. It looked like looking down at the sun to hit that hold one point at about 220 meters. We're at about 217 at this point. So we're slowing down, getting ready to get to that hold point. Again, Megan McArthur, the pilot, who from this camera view is on the right.
There
we go.
Copy, Endeavour, fly around is initiated. We are tracking.
So a little bit earlier than expected, but it seems like we did hit that hold point, and it was not long at all before Megan McArthur initiated that burn. Right now we're in a 50-second burn, the first of 4 to fly around the International Space Station.
Say again, you are not readable. Repeating call. We see the onboard alerts for Dragon I-1. And SpaceX, still very difficult to hear. Copy, you see the messages. I believe these are expected in this squadron. Is that correct? That's affirmative, Endeavour. The geometric filters were lost, but the time of flight filters are still converged. So Dragon is still in a good configuration for fly around. Copy, good config for fly around.
Station Houston for
Happy, thanks much, and to the Dragon crew, I'll be looking for you if I get a chance to see you outside, but very quickly wanted to say thanks to all of you. Thomas, thanks for being such a great guy, an inspiring, famous person from France. Aki, you're a commander who knew exactly when to be serious and when to be funny. I'm going to stop talking if I'm talking too long. Shane, thanks for being such a great example of what putting others first looks like. And Megan, thanks for becoming a sister to me up here in space. I'll miss hearing your laughter in adjacent modules.
Hey, Mark, we're really going to miss you. I've had such a great time with you. Learned a lot from you, and I know you're going to treat Crew-3 really well, and let us know if we can do anything for you. Take care. Fly safe.
Yeah, get home safely. It's been great being part of your team.
Hey, Clark, my friend. Take care of Anton and Piotr for us.
I'll do that right now.
The International Space Station, relieved of his duties to monitor the retreat of Dragon out to the hold point. Now he can stand down for monitoring the fly around. Some wonderful words from Mark Vande Hei, who got to spend the entire 197 days that the Crew-2 astronauts spent on board the International Space Station. Vande Hei being a crew member that's staying on board for almost a year. As part of the Soyuz rotation crew. A shout out to the Crew-3 astronauts who are set to launch just a few days from now, no earlier than November 10th, to make their way to the International Space Station. It'll be Mark Vande Hei's job to brief them on everything that the space station, everything about the space station, where things are, about emergency procedures. So he'll do the handover as Crew-2 is returning home now.
As we mentioned previously, we prefer to do direct handovers from crew to crew, but the weather off the Space Coast and just around Florida in general has been incredibly tricky the last week, really. So the teams at NASA and SpaceX did reviews and jointly made the decision that the best thing to do for both Crew-3 and Crew-2 would to be to bring the Crew-2 crew home before launching Crew-3, purely because of weather restrictions. We've been monitoring splashdown conditions on both sides of Florida, including wave height and wind speed, and those are really primary restrictions on allowing the crew to splash down, and it just happens to be that today was our best day to attempt that splashdown.
And before undocking, we did a weather brief and brief of the prime landing site, Pensacola, and it looks fantastic. Even with the trajectory, it's about 8.5 hours, even fitting in this fly around maneuver, which they're doing right now. So we just executed a good 50-second burn, the first of 4 to fly around the International Space Station. We're now in a cruise of the International Space Station. We'll be getting some great views the whole way. We're in an orbital nighttime, so we're relying on some of the external ways. We're getting some views as we're going in and out of that connection from between Dragon and station, but it looks like we have some Dragon views now. You can see a lot of, particularly the habitable volume, of at least this one from the zenith or the space facing to the aft or the back for about 20 minutes. It's about a 20-minute transit to get to that next point, which is essentially right on the V-bar or the velocity bar that's directly behind the International Space Station. There are no hold points throughout this maneuver, so right at about that time, they'll execute another 50-second burn. That'll do essentially the same thing. We did hear Mark Vande Hei actually mention that even though he's not in a monitoring phase, for watching the flight provides fantastic views of the Earth, and it's used very frequently for capture operations for some of the cargo craft that come to and from the International Space Station. But it'll also provide a very good flying around the International Space Station at that time on the underside or on the Earth. Fantastic shots from Mark Vande Hei. Space Station. We should even be in an orbital sunrise, so we should get some sunrise photos as well.
The shot that we had a little earlier with that nighttime view and all the exterior lighting of station, something about it so black and white, kind of looks like it could be in a Kubrick film.
Right.
Yeah. As we saw before, oh, right there it is actually. We have some shots there inside the Crew Dragon capsule. You could, when we get that back, you might notice that Thomas Pesquet has taken off his spacesuit to allow him to have better mobility while taking some photos. Once again, this fly-around maneuver is essentially a photographic survey of station. The time this was performed was 2018, I think you said?
That's right.
And there have been lots of new additions on station since then, so this is a new capability for Crew Dragon. Taking photos. They're in night mode inside Crew Dragon.
It's likely to limit the glare from the lit cabin inside the Dragon, likely reflecting off of the single window that Thomas Pesquet is using to take those photographs. We're in an orbital nighttime, right? So the only thing illuminating the outside of the space station is the lights of the space station itself. So limit those Thomas is taking.
Yeah, you can kind of think of it as, imagine if you're in a car and somebody's driving a car, a picture of something scenic outside, right? You're probably not going to be able to capture that because the interior cabin lights are reflecting off of your window. So
they do the same thing during crew sleep as well. The Crew-2 astronauts had about a 24-hour transit to the International Space Station. Almost. It was very just shy of 24 hours. So as part of that was an 8-hour sleep period. So everybody found a place inside Dragon, either bunking up in the seats, which I think is more common, or just finding a random spot to strap yourself and float, but they get an 8-hour rest period. Not on this flight, because it is a very short transit, and so we're going to be doing this for about an hour and a half, circling around the International Space Station, and then from there, you're really only at about, 6.5 hours, maybe 6 hours, from the time that you execute that first departure burn, which is departure burn 0, to break out of the fly-around, and then make your way towards splashing down off the coast of Florida.
Yeah. So once again, we have been keeping an eye on weather. We are targeting.
So we're in the middle of a fly-around period now, so we should be in this period it's a cruise, or the R-bar, essentially right in line with the top of the International Space Station to the aft position. We'll not see it as the Dragon is taking photographs of the cupola. Maybe we may even get to see Thomas Pesquet take a photo of the cupola, maybe seeing Dragon get over to the forward end of the International Space Station, all in the daylight.
Now, for those that might be unfamiliar with how teams in space communicate with those on ground, you have probably noticed by now that there is a beep that precedes communication. This is known as the Quindar tone.
But essentially,
if you've watched pretty much any space movie ever, you've